Welcome to Amazing Indiana Music Stories.
How old was I when I first started playing drums? I was 10 years old. I'm from a large family, large meaning 6 brothers and sisters, and reasonably financially not well off. My sister was enough older than me that she had graduated from high school and knew I wanted to play drums and bought me a snare drum, a high school tall kind of snare drum. And I started taking lessons from a junior high school music teacher. Ended up in the junior high band, the high school band. And so it was about, I guess, 10 when I got my first nibble at wanting to do something like this.
Was that the first instrument that you had played, or had you been exposed to other music things?
No, never. In fact, my whole career I was a drummer.
If there's a most reminiscent event from rock and roll era in the 50s that you were in, what would you say it would be?
Probably a rock and roll concert that was in Terre Haute, Indiana. And there were some super big names there. There's Ral Donner, as I recall, and Dion, Jackie D. Shannon. And that maybe was the first time of my experience working with someone huge, you know. And it was a kick.
Describe the gig. Do you remember what the performance was?
There were 6 or 7 acts, and we backed some of them, a couple of them, and then did our own thing. And then each of those artists that I just named did their. So it was just one after the other until, from the beginning until it was over.
Were the quote unquote like big names of the time that you were able to share the stage with or work with, was it as intimidating as someone might think, or did you find that these bigger acts were very compassionate to younger musicians?
2 things. One is the people were very compassionate. Everybody that I met in my career, except, no, I'm not going to say. Everybody I met in my career was very, very good. The second part was I was young, cocky, and there wasn't, not nasty cocky, but I was damn sure of myself, and nothing scared me. So meeting those people were a fun thing to do, but it didn't bother me to do it. So,
yeah. Didn't you have a hot rod in the late 50s that you rode around in, and what was it? Let's talk about this car.
That car took on a life of its own. I'll try to make this short, but I was playing in Terre Haute, Indiana, a place called the 6th Avenue Bar, my group. And there was a fellow that came in there nightly. Bruce Miller was his name, and he owned a 31 5-window Ford Coupe hot rod. And ironically, our name at the time was Keetie the Kats, and the name of his rod was Cat's Ass, but K-A-T-Z-A-S-S, just to clean it up a bit. And I got to be really good friends of his, and then decided, one day I just said, would you sell the car? And he said, yeah, I would sell it. And he named the price, and I ended up buying it. And I had it for seven years, I think. And then I got out of the music business, moved to California, sold the car. The car laid in somebody's field and rotted and rusted and everything for years. And a gentleman was driving down the road one day, saw that car in the driveway, went to the house, knocked on the door and said, "Is that car Keetie's?" This is years. And the old man said, yes, it is. And he said, would you sell it? And the guy said, get it out of that field and you can have it. So this guy rebuilt it all the way back exactly to the nut, the way it was built when I bought it. And he owns it today. It's sitting in a garage in Morgantown. And every time I come to town, I drive down and see John Mondebach, who's the guy that owns this car. And he's owned it all the while. I asked him the last time I was here 3 years ago in May, I said, would you sell it? And he said, you don't have enough money. So he still has the car. I dated his sister, and he was 10 years old. And he said to me when he was 10, he says, I'm going to own that car someday. And I laughed and thought, that's funny. And he did. He does. He still has it. It's amazing.
So cool. At one time in the mid-'60s, you used the band name of Bill Black's Combo. And what was that all about? How long did it last, or why did you name it that?
Well, I don't know if you're old enough to remember, but Bill Black's Combo was a big part of Elvis Presley's original group. And they ended up trying to do some tunes by themselves, and they did. They recorded Don't Be Cruel as an instrumental, and it became a huge multi-millions seller. And so agencies and everybody was trying to get the Bill Black Combo to go on the road and back, support their hits. And they didn't want to do it. So an agent called me and said, would you mind changing the head on your bass drum to Bill Black's Combo, and your group go on tour as the Bill Black Combo. So that's what we did. We did 30 one-night stands in 35 days, 15,000 miles with cars and a 5x8 U-Haul trailer from Montreal all the way across the lower border of Canada to Vancouver as the Bill Black Combo. That's how that happened. I've either performed with or performed in the same nightclub opposite them, like we'd do a show, they'd do a show kind of thing. But I worked with all the Bobbies. I did Bobby V, Bobby Vinton, Bobby Darin, Bobby Rydell, Paul Anka. I worked with Sammy. Sammy Davis. And did, I said Raul Donner, Frankie Avalon, Annette Funicello. Almost anybody in that era, somehow I had worked either opposite or with them. My biggest thrill in my life was Gene Krupa worked at the Embers here in Indianapolis. And I was playing right here in the square at a place called Charlie's Mad Pad. And for some reason, Gene came down to there at Charlie's Mad Pad almost every night after he'd finish up at the Embers. And he and I got to be really good friends. And he was my idol. I mean, growing up, there was nothing but Gene Krupa. So we got to be really good friends. And so that was probably my biggest thrill, although I didn't work with him, as you had asked, was meeting my idol and getting to know him as a friend.
What did you try to do to make you and your group stand out or stand apart from all the other groups that are doing, early days of rock and roll?
Mm-hmm. A really good friend of mine once, who knew all about my background, said in a book that Keith Phillips was blessed. He had the knack to always find good people. And my band was excellent artists, all of them. Every time I even changed, I was lucky enough, blessed, to find a guy to take that person's place that was either as good or better. So I think that helped, and I know that helped. And then not to brag, but I was a showman. I was an up-front drummer and not one to be in the back and keep time. And I think all of that worked. Yeah.
Still know how to twirl.
I still can twirl. But ironically, I never could do this one.
When you changed the name of your band to Keetie the Casuals, and then later it was Keith Phillips VI, didn't you perform on the Mike Douglas TV show?
Right. Mm-hmm.
What were some other, describe how the Mike Douglas show came about to begin with?
I was playing in Cleveland, which is where the Mike Douglas show at that time was. It hadn't moved yet. And it was in a nightclub on a street called Short Street. And what was her name? Ellen Frankel was the music director for him, and was until his show went off air. And he was doing his show out of the nightclub that I was playing in. And we were asked if we wanted, he came in and saw us, and Ellen came in and saw us, and Ellie. And they asked if we wanted to be on the Mike Douglas show. So it would have been kind of tough to say no. So that's what we did. We did 2 tunes. We did almost a big band kind of tune. At that time, I had 6 pieces. It was trumpet, trombone, sax, bass, keyboard, and me. And so we were fat, big fat sound. And we did that show. And that's how that came about.
There was 2 particular records that I saw and listened to and loved. That's The Way. And when I found it, I noticed that it was recorded here in Indiana. What studio did you record that tune, or was it a part of a larger session, or was it just a
No. I think that studio, and as I said, I'm 83 years old, was in Nashville, Indiana, not Tennessee. And we went down there and recorded that. And a country western guy had written that song. And the other side too. He wrote the other side too. And Jimmy Clendenning was with us, and for some reason, and I can't tell you why, I had decided that if I was going to record a record, I wanted voice on it instead of it being an instrumental, and so Jimmy recorded it. And I think it was quite successful locally. It never did anything nationally, which is sad, but...
There's another record that I found that was just an instrumental, I believe, called Way Out.
Mm-hmm.
What I thought was interesting is that Way Out to me sounds like rock and roll is about to go into its next phase. I'm getting this 50s beach Annette Funicello kind of feeling about it,
Mm-hmm.
but it also sounds like it is right at the point of introducing itself to Jim Morrison and the Doors. So with that tune, was that written that way intentionally? Like I said, it just sounds like to me it sounds like that's where rock and roll is about to start diverging into what it's about to be for the next generation. When that tune was written and you guys were performing it, Way Out, were you thinking ahead of where you were at that time?
Conversationally, I don't think we talked about that, but to me, we were an upfront group. We were a leading kind of group. And Larry, the guitar player at that time, was outstanding. And he really was the backbone of that song. And at that time, Del Shannon had Runaway, the tune, and that had that the high-pitched keyboard in it, and we knew that we wanted to do that. We wanted to do a takeoff from that, so we did Way Out. That was the biggest disappointment maybe in my career, was Way Out, because I really thought it would be a hit. I thought that thing would take off and it would be it. That would be the first of Keetie and the Kats being something to talk about. And it didn't do it. Very disappointing.
Where did you record Way Out?
Someplace here in Indianapolis. I don't remember. I know it was here in Indianapolis.
Where did you find yourself fitting into the music scene as we move later on into the 20th century? We're moving into mid-60s and getting into the 70s. Were you still performing as much, and did your style have to change with the times?
Well, it did, and that was also why there was a name change 3 times, which is maybe another disappointment in my life, was in my music life, was we started out with just rhythm guitar, lead guitar, trumpet and keyboard, if you can believe it. And that's not true. We started lead guitar, rhythm guitar, me, and a piano to start with. That's all we had. And that was when we were Keetie and the Kats, the early, very beginning of Keetie and the Kats. Then we would added saxophone, then I added trumpet, and I added trombone, and our sound and everything just kept changing. And funny, I talked about Charlie's Mad Pad. That was the Lemon Lounge before it was Charlie's Mad Pad. And we played there the last night that Lemon Lounge existed. Over that weekend, a guy had bought the place. Over that weekend, he completely transformed it into another nightclub and renamed it Charlie's Mad Pad, and we played the opening night. And we also, at that opening night, changed the name of the band from Keetie and the Kats to Keetie and the Casuals, because with the added instrumentation and everything, we thought that we were headed a little above that rock, if you want to, not to put down rock by any means, but we just thought we were a step further away. And then I got a hold of some really talented musicians to come into the groove. Bruce Waterman on trombone, which was the best. And Peter Funk that played sax. And we got further away even than that. And one day at a rehearsal, a couple of the guys said, "Why don't we change our name? It just really doesn't ring the bell we'd like for it to ring." I said, "We won't name it." And they all looked at me and said, "Let's name it to Keith Phillips VI." So and the evolution was, in my mind, was from all of that.
Do you think that, and this can be for rock and roll music or any other kind of genre that you listen to, is the quality of the music still there? Do you get the same inspiration out of it now as back then, or do you think that music has kind of been on a slow decline?
I think some of it is as good as it's ever been. I think a lot of it is people just working for the dollar rather than doing what they think will sell, rather than do what they can and could do. That's my opinion.
Do you like the music currently these days, or not so much?
I like country western, would you believe? I've made that turn, and I really like country western. And I still listen to rock, if you want to call it that, or the current stuff, And there's some of it that I really like. And there's some of it that I think's a laugh. I would rather see, you know, the instrumentation of that group do their thing. And if they're talented enough, they can do it and do it right, you know, present it, in my opinion.
If you wouldn't have been doing music in this capacity, what do you think would have taken your interest?
Well, when I first graduated from high school, actually my junior year in high school, I ran into a guy that was about 20 years older than me in my hometown, who had a country western group called Bob Pence and the Rhythm Rangers. And they didn't have a drummer. Back in, you're not old enough to remember, but there was a time country western acts didn't have drummers. And they didn't have a drummer, and he had approached me and wanted to know if I'd play with their group. And I was 16 at the time, and I said, yeah, I'll play with your group. He was a United States really well-known rodeo announcer as well. So he started doing rodeos and was doing the rodeo announcing during the day, and our band, his band, including me, was playing at night at those rodeos and playing country western. And then I think maybe the biggest beginning break that we ever had was Don Holt started the Whiteland Barn, was going to start the Whiteland Barn. And somehow, and I to this day don't know how it happened, he contacted Bob Pence and the Rhythm Rangers. And the first 2 Sunday nights of the existence of the Whiteland Barn was Bob Pence and the Rhythm Rangers, a country western group playing in this place that became just a roaring rock and roll place to be. And I then thought, one night I was talking to my piano player, Dave Ellman, and I said, you know, we could find a couple of more guys and work real hard and do some rock and roll. And I bet you I could get Don Holt to try us. And he did. We formed a quartet, and he let us play there, and we played there almost every Sunday for a long time. And the place went from the opening night, I don't remember quite remember the numbers, but it was something like 5 girls and 70 guys showed up the first night that place was open. And in the end, last time I played there, we had like 12 or 1,300 people, and it was probably a 50-50 split. The Whiteland Barn was a big name builder for not just my group, for other groups as well. I mean, everybody wanted to play there at one time. It got so big. I think Don Holt and the Whiteland Barn had as much to do with the rock and roll scene in Indiana as anything. That venue was just a stamp of approval. I ended up being a booking agent, for a little while on the side. It was not something I really wanted to do. And I booked Dwayne Eddy there. There was a number in that era. Oh, Ray Stevens. Had Ray Stevens there. But the Whiteland Barn, it's just a shame that things, nothing lasts forever. The Whiteland Barn was a great place.
On any given night that there's a show, what's the atmosphere like?
Dick Clark's bandstand multiplied by about 5. It really was. The people were just, it was great. There were some of the greatest rock and roll dancers I ever saw there. Yeah, it was a great place.